and welcome to Soup Scoop. I'm your host and the superintendent of the Mount Vernon City School District, Dr. Kenneth Hamilton. We have an amazing show lined up for you today. We will be having as our guest Councilwoman Delia Farquharson. Then we will have an interview with our tennis stars from the Mount Vernon City School District, followed by a special interview with a personal friend of mine, TV reality star Peter Gunz, followed by an interview with Shawn bills from Sony B.M.G. So why don't we get started? Please welcome Delia Farquharson to our show.
Thank you, Superintendent. How are you?
I am great. So today we're here to talk about a national issue that has plagued our community, and that's one surrounding mental health.
Absolutely.
And in your capacity as a licensed clinical social worker, I know this is something that you have taken on to be of particular importance to you in our community. Why don't you tell us about how this got on your radar and why?
Right. Thank you, Superintendent. I appreciate being here. And I'll tell you that I've always been interested in the mental health, the emotional wellness in our community, because that's the field that I work in as a licensed clinical social worker and someone who's practiced in this community. That's the field I work in. So I'm concerned about that. In my capacity as City Councilwoman, I came to learn of an incident in our community a few months ago that just left me really alarmed. And that is that someone overdosed in our Dunkin' Donuts on Gramerton Avenue. And when I learned about that, that was just really significantly alarming to me. And it was said to me in such a casual way that I did not understand that. So I set out to find out where this young person, because it was a young person, 26-year-old, who expired, where she belonged, to what community of people she belonged. So I walked around to all the service providers in the immediate area, trying to identify what community she belonged to, and I could not. But in the midst of doing that, what I decided to do was to convene a meeting. And so we convened a meeting of all the providers and other stakeholders in the community to talk about the issue of mental health and substance use. And so that's how this community initiative was continued.
So talk to me about the community initiative. I know that we are seeing some pretty serious issues amongst some of our students around mental health. And I noticed the terminology used about mental wellness, and I want to give you an opportunity to clarify that, that new terminology that's been recognized in the industry of late. But many of our students are displaying trauma because of things that they are exposed to. In your capacity as a licensed clinical social worker, how are we addressing that from a systemic standpoint in our community?
Excellent question. Dr. Hamilton, the great thing about New York State is that our State Department of Education, like you know, has decided that mental health education is an important part of the well-being of our children. So for this year, it's becoming an unfunded mandate, but a requirement in our school district, right? And so that's where we start. We start by making sure that we're addressing all the social and emotional issues, as well as the psychological issues that our children face. Because what we know from all the evidence and all the research, that our children cannot succeed. They won't learn the ABCs if the other things are not in place, if they are being subjected to abuse, whether physical, emotional, verbal, no matter the abuse, if our children are being exposed, if our children are being exposed to harsh environmental conditions, if they don't have enough to eat, if they don't have secure housing, all of those things contribute to the emotional wellness of our children. So I think it's really important to understand that, you know, trauma comes in all forms. Trauma, you know, anything could be traumatic, because trauma is defined as the person's ability to cope with whatever the incident is. And if that ability is overwhelmed, then it may be traumatic for the person.
Absolutely. So of our student population, 10% of our students are identified as homeless. And when I talk to my colleagues, Mount Vernon seems to have a disproportionate number of students who fall into that category. From your perspective, is there any justification or explanation, perhaps, as to why that may be so prevalent in our community?
You know, Dr. Hamilton, there are many reasons for that, but I think it's important that we restate that 10% of our population, our student population of about 8,300 children,
correct,
right, are homeless. So we're looking at more than 800 children in this community of 68,000 people being homeless or being housing unstable. So there are many reasons for that. One is that we have disproportionate placement of children who are at risk, who are displaced, being housed here in Mount Vernon, foster care systems, other kinds of system. Families who are in our transient housing, they are placed in Mount Vernon. And so that's why we have that representation in our community. But these are our people, because these are black and brown people that are represented in these statistics. And so it's important to understand that what we need are resources. You know, one of the questions I posed this morning to someone at the county is, what's the vacancy rate in Mount Vernon for housing? You know, what the state says, what New York State says, is that if the vacancy rate in a community is less than 5%, then a public housing crisis needs to be declared. I guarantee you that the vacancy rate in Mount Vernon is way less than 5%.
Wow.
Right? And so we understand what's happening. Just recently, a couple weeks ago, 5 of your students in this community were moved out of their home, and they're still homeless because they called me for help. So this is a problem that's arising, and it's because, of course, we have poverty that's prevalent in our community.
Absolutely.
Right? We have the systemic issues of oppression, of joblessness, of poor health care. We have all these systemic issues that are prevalent here in Mount Vernon that are not being addressed in a systemic way. And so that's what we need to see happen. We need solutions for addressing these concerns for the community that exists.
One of the things that I think happens is when you look at what we spend to educate children, and you compare that per student cost to other communities, we often overlook the fact that students who are represented in this particular population that you described, either homeless or inadequate housing or lack of necessary resources, it takes additional resources to get those children ready for education and to support their families. What kind of resources are available through social services, through the various entities in our community to help support these students and their families?
So there are resources in our community. And I'll be the first to state that there are resources in our community, and DSS is there. So all children are eligible for health care. Families are eligible for food supplements through the SNAP benefits. And there are other resources that are available. I would say there's inadequate housing. But one of the things that's happening here, I think, in Mount Vernon is that even though the resources exist, they're not being accessed and used efficiently. And so that's part of the campaign that we want to launch, which says it's okay to ask for help. We want to be able to provide a direct connection for the resources that exist to the people who need them, and to create a public awareness campaign that let the community, the families know how to access and how to use the resources that exist. So, the idea of it's okay to ask for help and the collaboration between the community and the school district is an important thing to elevate the level of wellness in our community.
You raise a good point. So, as you know, my experience in education has spanned the spectrum. I've worked in very wealthy communities, I've worked in very poor communities, I've worked in communities that are predominantly white and communities that are predominantly made of people of color. And one of the things that I've noticed is that in other communities, people access mental health services more readily than many of our students in this community, which is why I think this initiative is so important. So from your perspective, do you find that people in our community access these resources and ask for help, or do we need to make it easier for them and remove any stigma that may be associated with accessing social services?
Absolutely, absolutely. The stigma has always existed, right? So we know that when someone has emotional or mental health challenges, that they're looked on like it's a character flaw, there's something wrong with you, when that's far from the case, right? The fact is that nobody wishes on themselves mental illness, and it's no different from a physical illness. But because our society has taken this stigmatized approach to it, people are hesitant to ask for help or hesitant to be labeled, and so they suffer unnecessarily. And so what we know is that if we can normalize it, if we can make people understand that you are no different because you may have emotional or mental health needs, then you know, it levels the playing field, and it makes it easier for us to serve families, to serve children, and there's a direct correlation because, you know, what the statistics say is that 1 in 5, and I would, you know, suggest that it's even higher than that, but 1 in 5 person is either diagnosed or diagnosable with a mental illness. So 1 in 5, how many of us in this room, right? And so there, you know, so when you think about that, it's a lot of us. And then because it's a lot of us, we can normalize it if people would bring it out of, you know, the dark.
Wow.
And so it's important. And then if we are able to, most children begin to display symptoms of mental illness by the time they're 14. It's often misunderstood as oppositional defiance, as juvenile delinquency, but more often than not, it is some mental health need that's going unmet. And so what happens is that our prison system becomes the largest mental health system in our country.
Wow. And that's why it's so important for us to provide sensitivity training for our teachers,
Yes,
so that they recognize those issues and that our children are not prematurely classified
right.
when they're displaying that. But in the time that we have left, because I'm getting the wrap-up sign, how can people access you and or services that are important for them to know that are available in our community?
So I think, Dr. Hamilton, I'm going to say thank you again for agreeing. What we want to do and what we've agreed to do is to launch a contest, a logo contest within our schools to identify the logo that we will use to represent the It's Okay to Ask for Help campaign. The idea is that we want to really saturate our community with that message, that it really is okay to ask for help, whether it is food, housing, mental health, physical health, re-entry services, whatever the services are. We want to collect all the resources into one, create an app that people can access electronically, but also have concrete marketing material, flyers, posters, billboards that say it's okay to ask for help. In Mount Vernon, it's okay to ask for help because we have the resources and we are motivated to help you. So we want that to be the message. So we want all our students to participate in this campaign, to create your best logo. How would you send the message to your friend that everything is going to be okay? Represent that in a picture, send it to us so we can use that to launch the campaign in our community that says Mount Vernon cares about the emotional health of everyone, particularly our children, and that we together, we can make things better.
I can't thank you enough for that important information, and the school district is committed to partnering with you and our various social service agencies to make sure our kids and our families know it is okay to ask for help. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Joining me now is Coach White and 2 of our undefeated tennis players, Verlaine Clark and Alani Connor. Welcome to Soup Scoop.
Thank you.
So, Coach, what's it like this season to have 2 undefeated players under your tutelage?
It was a warm welcome before the season. Alani used to be the #1 player. Verlaine had gone to another school, and this year she moved back into district, and wonderful tennis player. And having the 2 of them as our #1 and 2 made life a lot easier for me, and great girls, great people to have on the team, along with everyone else that's on the team.
So, Verlaine, what does this feel like?
It feels really nice. I feel like I've come a long way from before, and it's bettered me as a person, and it's put me on a better track for school and college.
And Alani, I want to ask you the same question. What is it like?
Feels great. I feel like I'm doing something good for my county, Mount Vernon in general. Just feels really good.
So what do you think makes the difference in terms of your preparation this year as opposed to previous years? Verlaine, you want to answer that for me?
I've been working through the summer. Like, I've been doing exercises, workouts, and I've just put my mind on what I wanted to do.
And what's next? What happens now?
Well, I play individual tournaments as well as high school tennis, so I'll continue training the same way, maybe even harder, to win the tournaments and then come back next season and hopefully go to states and even win.
Well, and Alani, what about you? What do you think is next?
Definitely learning from losses and training even harder and working on my weaknesses, and same goals as trying to go to states.
So, Coach, what advice would you give to other students who may not have reached the same caliber of excellence that these young ladies have?
I think with tennis in general, coaching both the boys and the girls team, I think it's a great activity for anyone to get involved in. It's a constructive activity. We have a great core on the boys and the girls side. And I think it will inspire others, especially some of the young people around the community, to do other things. I know basketball, we promote that and they have a great program, but I think it's important that kids get involved with as many activities as they can. And being a tennis player, you're kind of alone on an island when you're out there. So I think in terms of conflict resolution and learning a little bit about yourself and character development, I think it's one of the greatest activities, especially in regards to sports, that children, especially those in our community, can really get involved in and do some good around here.
I think one of the challenges that we have with our sports program is how do we make sure that we marry the academics with the practice and the sportsmanship. Blaine, how have you managed to keep the two in perspective?
I just have to have good time management. Like, I go from school, and then in the breaks before I have practice, I would try to do my homework and study, and then I would go to practice and then come back, put in a little bit more time in the academics, and then I'll go to sleep.
And what's your schedule like, Alani?
Definitely the same exact thing. Finding breaks to work on my academics, and when I get back home, if I didn't finish the academics, I have to go back and work on the academics and go back to practice.
I think you ladies are two excellent examples for what we want our students to model and emulate. What about college plans? What are you thinking about?
I'm aiming for Stanford University.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
D1.
Is scholarship in your horizon?
For sure.
Yeah, and what about you, Elaine? Where do you think you're going to be going?
I'm not exactly sure where, but I definitely want to play D1 and definitely aiming for a scholarship.
Awesome. And what about majors? Have you thought about your majors?
Yes. I want to major in business. I'm not exactly sure which business, but I know I want to do business.
I'm looking into law, like criminal justice more.
Wow, amazing. And so do you think that you'll pursue professional tennis at some point?
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
definitely.
already started doing ITFs, which is like traveling and playing against people from other countries. And eventually I'll start playing tournaments that will pay me to play.
That's amazing. So as you mentioned, Coach, we do put a lot of emphasis on our boys basketball team. Mount Vernon is known for basketball, and sometimes some of the other sports tend to take a back seat to that, just in terms of how the media portrays that. What kind of support do you need in order to help build your team, the capacity of your team, and encourage other students to participate in the sport?
Ultimately, familiarizing the children with the sport, which is a great lifelong sport. I think it starts in the schools. If elementary schools are doing programs such as tennis in phys ed curriculum, after school programs, it's very easy to do these kind of activities. And once the kids get a racket and understand the game and familiarize themselves with it, I think they'll take a liking to it. And that's how you create these lifelong players.
Awesome. Have you guys had a chance to play on the new courts yet?
No, not yet.
Well, there are new courts that are waiting for you to get on them, and we are excited about what you do and how you have represented our district. Thank you so much for being a part of Suit Scoop. Good luck to you in your future endeavors, and keep us posted on what's going on.
Great. Thank you for having us.
So we'll be right back. Next, joining us will be reality TV star Peter Gunz, talking about a new initiative called Guns Against Guns. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining me now is my good friend, best known for his reality show Love and Hip Hop New York, Peter Gunz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. About time.
So, Peter is here to talk about a new initiative that he has launched, going around to schools and speaking to kids about an initiative called Guns Against Guns. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what spearheaded you to take this initiative on?
Just feeling like, first personal experience, you know, I'm in the neighborhood. I grew up in the hood, and then, of course, I was, you know, caught with an illegal firearm myself. And the fact that it was so easy to get one and normal to have one, and ultimately the go-to, you know, weapon if I had beef or anything, fighting became like, man, nobody's fighting. Everybody has guns, so I'm gonna get me one. And I really didn't have any problems in the hood like that, you know, but it was just automatic. You had a gun. And I understand why kids want to do that. So I figure who better to speak to the kids about it than someone that's been down that road. And then having a little bit celebrity with Love and Hip Hop and all of that, I felt like they would listen to me more than they would listen to the average person telling them guns are bad. We heard that before. Guns are bad. We heard that before. But there's so many other things that come with guns. You know, besides the fact that you get caught with a gun, what happens when you go to jail? What happens when you come out of jail? So I felt like I would be a good advocate for.
Well, that's a very good point, because I know having the opportunity to use your celebrity, if you will, and I think that's part of what more of our celebrities have to do, is use their status and their platform to promote things that help our youngsters make better choices and decisions.
Absolutely.
Now, I know TV has a way of portraying certain images and certain characteristics, particularly some of the reality shows.
Right.
So I think it is important for our youngsters to have a level of intimacy with you around other experiences outside of love and hip hop. What are some of the points that you want students to walk away with after your presentation?
Just understanding the consequences. You know, like if you have a gun, you're more likely to get killed by a gun. You know, carrying a gun, more people die from gunshot wounds than shooting someone. You wouldn't know that. The cutting statistics in jail and you know, just little things. Like even if you don't get killed or shot, the consequences behind having a gun. And like I said, it's so normal and so easy to get, and it almost feels like it's set up for us to fail. So it almost sounds like a conspiracy to most people, but to me, it's almost like written on the wall. It's set up for you to, because life ain't the same after you come out. You're not normal when you come home, and things are harder. And not to mention, we always talk about what happens to the person, what happens to your family, your mom, and all the other people that suffer behind your actions, you know.
So let's walk down memory road then. Tell us, what happened with you? How did you get caught with a weapon? What were the circumstances? And when you look back on that, what would you have done differently if you could rewrite that script?
Well, first off, I was just plain stupid. You know what I mean? Like, it's no reason, it was absolutely no reason for me to have a gun. Absolutely no reason. I had no problems with no one. It was just like trying to be cool, trying to be in, and even showing my people, look. And doing that, somebody called the police and said he's walking around with a gun. You know what I mean? But today is a whole different ball game. Nobody has to call the police. It's a camera in every light, every car, every store. That's why when you hear somebody did something dumb, you also hear about them getting caught immediately.
Right, that's very true.
They know where you're walking, every place you go by. My motorcycle got stolen last month, and the police came and showed me footage of the guy stealing my motorcycle for a 4 or 5 block radius.
Wow.
So when you do something dumb with a gun, you're getting caught, and it's 3 to 9, nothing to talk about, and it's just it's just so stupid. And there's so many things I would have done differently, because it looked cool to my son. It looked cool to the kids that, you know, my dad got caught with a gun and went to jail. What did he do? He got caught with a gun. You know what I mean? Like it's some kind of badge of honor to have a gun charge or to be in that, and it's not. Ultimately, it's disgusting.
You talked about some of the side effects, some of the residuals that you may not think about when you're in that situation in terms of how it impacts your family and how it in fact impacts relationships. What are some of the consequences that you deal with today as a result of those choices made back then?
It's on my record. I'm a felon. So even if a simple, you know, a police officer pulls me over, in his computer it already reads he's a violent felon. So our interaction may be different from someone that, you know, doesn't have a felony. If I wanted to do something like, you know, hey, a job, you know, all right, I'm also doing TV, but I want to go try and do this. Sorry, Mr. Gunz, you have a felony on your record. You know what I mean? And just that stigma. And most people think, you know, oh, it's a gun charge. They want a conviction. You know what I mean? So even if you got caught with a gun and you didn't go to jail, which is impossible now, but let's say you got probation. You didn't come home, you didn't win, they still won. You're a felon. That's all they want is conviction. So my thing is to try to help, you know, keep that down and do my part.
Wow.
I was part of on my first record, Uptown Baby. I was rapping about guns and shooting, and you know, so I feel like it's my responsibility to let people know that's entertainment and that's not what's up.
You know what? That's a great segue into my next question. So a lot of the music that, and I love hip hop music. You know, I just produced a TV pilot with you.
Yeah, Rip the Beat,
and it's about hip hop, and but I want to be responsible about it. You know, I think that so often our kids get caught up in the culture of hip hop, and a lot of the hip hop music today is about violence, is about degrading women, is about using profanity to convey a message. What's your take on hip hop and the hip hop generation today?
Well, you know, I've done my part of degrading women and advocating violence on records, and you know, so that's again why I want to try to come back and clean it up. You know, clean up what, you know, but we also have to look at it as entertainment, you know, and we need to be responsible as a parents as well to let kids know it's entertainment. And some rappers have to be a little bit more responsible, in understanding that kids look up to them and they want to emulate what they see. The pill popping and lean and drinking cough syrup is not cool. Walking around and shooting at people is not cool. And 99.9% of the rappers that's rapping about that ain't doing that. And the ones that are doing that did that. They're not doing it now, and they're rapping about something from the past. But it's all entertainment. And you know, you're not gonna walk out after playing Grand Theft Auto and start shooting at people. So the same thing with music. Listen to it and take it for what it is, entertainment value. But yeah, rappers have to be a little bit more responsible.
A lot of our kids want to emulate that because it's associated with nice cars and a lot of money and popularity and notoriety. And oftentimes they lose sight of the fact that all of that is a part of a set. All of that is stuff that is either loaned or borrowed or leased, and these people don't own that.
99.9% of it. 99.9% of the stuff that you see people doing are borrowed. At least you have very few Jay-Z's and Nas's and you know, Eminem's and Dr. Dre's. Those are maybe 5, 6, 7 rappers that's billions of people trying to get in. Right. So yeah, I mean, listen, even on Love and Hip Hop, people rent houses and jewelry, cars. They want to look a certain way, present themselves as a certain way. And the ones that's really doing that be broke in about 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
So it looks cute now, but you know, when you're not hot no more and the lights are down and nobody's watching the TV show no more and the show's off, then, you know, you're struggling.
Wow.
Because you was out there just spending money and blowing money and portraying to be something that you're not. So yeah, you know what's crazy? I was never really guilty of over-flossing. It was never my thing. But advocating violence on records, I'm guilty of that. So it's my responsibility to try to turn that around.
And that's why I think the Guns Against Guns initiative is so important, because kids look up to you. You know, you have a lot of street credibility, as the kids call it. So hearing a message to you about being against guns, and I think the parallel between your name and your initiative, I think, is powerful and catchy in and of itself. But I think it's important for our kids to understand why you have used your platform to educate them. And sometimes the image that is portrayed of you is contrary to the initiative that you're pushing right now. Right. So I think it's important to use platforms like this and even platforms that are bigger to push this Guns Against Guns initiative so that it becomes a national movement.
Absolutely. You know, my uncle used to always say, ignore the source, but absorb the content. He was a drug addict. but he was extremely intelligent. So he would try to talk to me and my brothers and sisters, and we'd be laughing at him because I look, and he used to always be, look, ignore the sauce, but absorb the content. And that's something I always stood by, even with me. When people come, oh, you know, I see you on the show, you kind of ignore that, but absorb what I'm telling you in real life and what I'm trying to, because you really don't have no control over what comes over the airwaves. I'm on a TV show, I'm on the screen for about 15 minutes after commercials and cuts and everybody else gets their scene. And they cram nothing but negative stuff in those 15 minutes and add a little bells and whistles. Not that I don't have any mess, but, you know, of course, but if that's all you see of me for 15 minutes every Monday, that's who I am to you. But I know I'm way more than that, and that's why I try to get out and touch the people and let them know I'm way more than what you see on TV.
I think the Guns Against Guns initiative is something that deserves national attention, and I certainly want to help you create a platform to promote that, because I think kids need to hear your message. You've got some powerful statistics in there, and paralleling that with your personal experience, I think, is extremely beneficial. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come to Mount Vernon and share that story, because if we just save one,
yes,
it's worth the journey.
This one, yeah, I don't care, even if it's just one. They hear me, if I could just say one, I'm successful. And thank you for the platform that you've given me to promote this. This is wonderful.
I appreciate that. In Hamilton, superintendent of the Mount Vernon City School District and the host of Soup Scoop. We are very fortunate today to have a very special guest in our midst, a young man, Shawn Dollar Bills, who is an A&R representative for Sony B.M.G. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you, sir.
So we thought this would be a great opportunity for our students, because you represent a part of the music industry as a career opportunity for our students that is often undiscovered and untapped. Many of our youngsters are interested in music and music production and performing, but there's a business aspect of it that many of our students don't have a lot of exposure to. So tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are, a little bit about your background, and then I'm going to get into some of the questions that our students have presented in advance of your appearance today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Shawn Sanders, a.k.a. Dollar Bill, which I created the name me and Master P. You know, he hired me 20 years ago. I may look young, but, you know, I'm kind of up there in the age. But nevertheless, we started out, as I started out, I went to college, and I took up business in college, and I worked my way up. And what I did was I kept myself on the scene with different, you know, events and different, you know, type of things that went on as far as with the music. Because when I came up, I was an entertainer myself. You know, I was known, we grew up in the projects, and I did the beatbox, my partner did the rap. And at that particular time, rap was more like, it was iffy. You know, they said it was a fad, it was gonna come and go, but it didn't. So we continued to do different things. As my background, you know, what inspired me to want to do it, because I was family, it's come from the family, of my family roots. My dad is one of the singers of the late 60s and 70s group New Birth. They had a song called Wildflower, which was later on done, remixed and made by Ludacris and Jamie Foxx, and the song was Unpredictable. So that was my father's song. So I come from the family tree of music and background, and what it was with me is I was a person that never gave up. You know, even coming from the rough end of living in the poverty world and the projects, you know, because don't never think that you can't make it. You know, I come from the rough projects, born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, home of Muhammad Ali, you know, so I've seen the bad and I've seen the good, but I was one that didn't deal with the bad. I was always the one that tried to stay, you know, to myself.
All right, that's a very good point. So tell us a little bit about how you discovered your first big act, that talent that made it big for, not just for themselves, but even got your foot in the door.
Well, really, the first big act that I discovered, it was more like when I hooked up as doing shows, and I kept going at Master P. When they first started, he was hot. He was underground. He was current. He was more like, you know, he would listen to you when you had something to say, you know. So I stayed on him. He gave me his number. I kept up on him, and then later on down the line, he said, I'm gonna give you a call when I'm ready. So on that note, later on down the line, when he started No Limit Forever is when he called me and brought me in the door and said, I have a position for you as A&R. So I started out as A&R, and the first act that I discovered, her name is Catalina Toma, like the flower. She's from Romania. I discovered her, and she sent me her music. I'm like, P, you gotta listen to this. She's like hot. He's like, man, let me check her out. So they end up signing her, Romeo Miller, which is Master P's son. They end up bringing her from Romania and signed her and turned her whole life around. Wow. So she was the first big catch, you know, and it wasn't even in the U.S., but it was overseas. But I figure if I go after the national act and bring it in, then I can start pouring in more of the local and intermediate cities around the country. Awesome. And start grabbing everybody now, because they see the line of my work was excellent by me catching her.
So what a lot of my students may not know is I'm a lover of hip hop. I love hip hop music, and I follow the genre quite a bit. And I think hip hop has changed over the years dramatically in terms of what we grew up with and what our children are listening to and exposed to now. How have you seen the industry change over the last 10 years in terms of what has happened to hip hop and the reputation that hip hop has?
Well, that's a good point. And this goes out to a lot of young folks that's trying to get in the music industry. And I'm telling this from the heart because I've sit in corporate meetings, and right now the younger folks, what they doing now, the new millennium rappers, they love it. What they would call the mumble jumble rap, or if it's the hip hop era or whatever. What they don't like, and I'm telling y'all, if y'all really checking this out, really, you know, meditate to this. When a young folk is on the internet holding up guns, they pants sagging, they talking about all the stuff they doing in the streets, even if it's true or false, that's a no off the top. They're not even, that's papered in the trash for them. You know, because there's a lot of corporate investors, and when they signing deals, and if I say, for instance, if I get an artist out of this school, and they got all their documents right, they got a bio, EPK, you know, photo, they got good followers, and they got things going in their direction, and then they don't tell nobody the other side of them, and I go on the internet, and they on there with a group of people with all red bandanas on jumping around. For somehow or another, it makes it's an iffy situation. So when you dealing with this new era of music, try to be more focused, because that's why they going after a lot of pop, you know, artists. You got more of the Caucasian. If you look at it, look at most of them that's rapping now. They coming out. You know, you had Mac Miller. You got all of these new, you got all of the new Caucasian, because they more focus on the stuff that we grew up and had bad terms on, and most of them didn't, you know, but, you know, coming from a bad era of the minorities, you know, they taking what we should have been doing and putting it out there, and those people are loving them. They shoving them the checks left and right. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Because they see that this is something y'all should have been doing, but we gonna take on the good and let the bad stay bad. They don't want to deal with it.
I want to expand upon that a little bit, because that's the business aspect that a lot of our children don't understand in terms of the money that gets put into hip hop, and the business aspect in terms of sponsors and sponsors' names being associated with artists that may sometimes represent the wrong kinds of things. So I know you work for Sony B.M.G, which is one of the largest music companies in the world.
Yeah.
And I know Sony is backed by people who bring money to the table and invest in different acts. Exactly. So when they see students who are doing trap music or promoting violence or degrading women or gangbanging or any of those kinds of negative things, how do sponsors and investors look at that from a music business perspective?
Well, it's two sides, as they say, two sides to every story. Like on this side of a sheet is clear. So if I'm pushing that clear, good, clean cut artist there, keep it like it. If I flip it over, it's a bunch of, okay, what is this? What is that? What is that? They want to know if they're investing their money into this person or this act. They want to know, okay, well, we cool with it. They're hot. They got the intelligence. They got the motivation. They got the rap skills. They can do what they want to do as far as moving forward. Just stay on the right track. A lot of them artists, like some of them, you know, that like the dude that Triple X guy, he was very talented. He had a lot of followers. He had a lot of people really up the, you know, the bat for him. But guess what? What we don't know, and I'm telling it, when they seen he got, you know, killed, it was like, okay, you got a department over here and you got the investors over here. Now everybody's scrambling for their money that they got invested in that guy. They want to get that back. But then you got this group of people over here saying, okay, let's run this until we can get all we can get out of it. So when you go into this music business, try to go in as clean cut as you can and make yourself go longevity. Like you never hear nothing about the Smokey Robinsons, or you never hear nothing about Beyonce, and you never hear nothing about none of the people that's going, because they smart. They just not going to deal with that. But you got this young millennium group, they just got to be known for certain things. You know, everybody can fight if they put their mind to it, but be a fighter for raising your family and going to the next level, living good. Fight for the cause of wanting to do better, you know, instead of, you know, going in and, you know, the word exchange and all that. Those people, they got internet police. If y'all don't know that, I'm telling y'all, watch out for what y'all say on the internet. You can say what you want to say, oh, they ain't looking. Yes, they are. That's why they came down hard on Facebook, on Mark Zuckerberg and them, because of what, you know, people is saying they not have, you know, you got students bringing guns to school now. Like, that's not acceptable. Like, you can't do that, and then you turn around, you hanging with this group of people, and you think it's okay. That's not okay. So they look at everything from the internet, from you being in the music to your actual life. If you putting it out there, they checking it out.
That's all the time we have. Thank you, Peter Gunz, for being here, and to the rest of our guests for today. I appreciate you tuning in to Soup Scoop. This has been a very powerful episode. I'll see you next time on Soup Scoop. This is Dr. Kenneth Hamilton signing out.